Hi, I'm Lance and I'm a gamer.
And I'm Sam and I'm a non-gamer.
And we are Love to Hate, where we help gamers find great games to play with non-gamers.
And today we're taking a look at Finding Atlantis by Hybr Synapses Games.
Finding Atlantis is a thrilling deduction game. That's what the box says here. It is a deduction game in which you will be using a cell phone or some electronic device to scan cards, because all the cards have not QR codes, but kind of think like that in terms of what it does, the purpose of it, that dictates what you'll be doing on the course of the game. But ultimately what you're trying to do in this game, you're a submarine and you're trying to find Atlantis, the lost city of Atlantis. And the player who's able to find the different spots on the map, the ocean floor, where Atlantis is going to be the winner in this game. Let's go down to the table where I'll show you how this one works, and then we'll come back and share our thoughts on it as a gamer and non-gamer. All right, I have Finding Atlantis on the table. Let me show you this deduction game. Now with this one, what you're going to have as far as the components, you're going to have a thick pad of sheets that you are going to use. Every player is going to have one of these sheets, and you're going to put it behind a player shield that's going to match with their player color, and you're going to give them the matching submarine that has the screen printed icon on it that looks like a submarine that matches with their player color. But then you're going to also give them one of each of the other player colors for the other colors that are in the game of the different submarines, and then one of each of the different colored mines of the players that are in the game. You also have lots of character cards, and you're going to shuffle these up and give each player two, and then they're going to choose between the two one that they will play as for that particular game. And these are going to have different abilities that you can do throughout the course of the game, so you'll want to just kind of familiarize yourself with the different abilities and what they can do. We'll come back to what that means here in just a minute. I'm going to set these off to the side for right now, though. And then each player has their own deck of cards matching their player color. And all the decks are the same, but you may not use all the cards depending on what type of game you're playing, because you can play a more simplified version of the game where you are not dropping mines trying to hurt the other players. And you also may not need the periscope either if you're not having the mines, because the periscope is going to tell you where the dangerous stuff are in the game, like mines and sea monsters. So you may or may not use these two cards, but you will use all the other cards in the game. Then you have a deck of artifact cards, and so this is a deck of cards that are going to give you special one-time use abilities, and these are extremely powerful. Now, you're only ever going to see 4 of these in any given game, so there's some replayability here with the different artifacts, and there's a lot of them here, as you can see, but you definitely want to make sure you have these in the game, and you'll keep that right next to your phone. And that's right, yes, you do have to have an internet-connected device that has the Finding Atlantis app on it, downloaded on it, like you see here with this, and I'll show you how this works here in just a second. But you will keep it next to your artifact cards, and then lastly you'll give a player aid to each of the different players, which just basically lines out all of the different rules as far as the deduction goes. Now, it's not going to actually tell you how to play the game, it's just going to remind you of the concepts here with the deduction. So let's look at this in more detail closely, as you can kind of get a good idea of how you make deductions based on this. So what you're really trying to do is you're trying to find the 4 different spots that Atlantis could be on, and if you can identify those 4 spots before anyone else, then you win the game. And they're always going to be either orthogonally adjacent or diagonally adjacent to one another. So these 4, as you can see, they're all clustered together right here. You're never going to have them completely spread it out on the map. Now, the other things that you're going to find on the map, you're going to find these little star-looking, asterisk-looking spots, and those are the artifacts. And there are 4 of them as well, and that is when you would get one of these cards. As you can see this icon right here. Maybe you can't see it. There you go. And then you're going to have lots of different seamounts that look like mountains. They look like this spot right here, and they're going to be in any spot that there's either an artifact or an Atlantis spot or is adjacent to one of those things. And so that's just kind of going to give you a little bit of a clue that, hey, you found a seamount. There might be Atlantis nearby, or there might be an artifact nearby, or it might be both. And it could even be on that spot. Now, if you find one of these spaces, that means there's absolutely nothing there, nor is it next to a artifact or Atlantis. Now, the magnifying glass indicates that traces are there on that spot, and it could be a seamount. It could, if you're playing with the mines, it could also be a mine. So you do have to be careful about when you find the magnifying glass on the app. And the app is going to be what tells you about any of these spaces, anything about the ocean floor, which, as you might guess, is represented on your sheet here. And as you can see, it is a 6x6, and this blue region on the outside, you cannot travel through this spot, but it is going to show up on the map on the app because it doesn't want to give away unnecessary clues to the other players by not showing these spots, and then somebody would know, oh, you're on the edge of the board, and kind of piece together that thing. So it's going to show you what's in these spots, and that might also help you to deduce what's actually on the spots inside the 6x6 grid as well. So, that being said, let me show you what happens here with this app. Now, you got to download the app, and it's going to go through a tutorial and show you everything. But once you get through that, you can actually play the game, and you'll indicate how many players are in the game. And it also asks you, where are you sitting in orientation to the phone? And so if the red player is sitting maybe on the opposite side of the table, they'll pick one of these two, and then you're going to pick what captain you are. And so this comes back to the different captain cards, and let's just go with Navy. And so the red player is Navy, and they're sitting on that side. The green player is sitting over here, and they're the miner. I'm the blue player, and I'm sitting right in front of the phone, and I'm going to be the sailor. And then the yellow player is sitting over here, and they're Captain Nemo, and we're ready to go, all aboard. And now it's going to ask you to prepare your game. So you can play with the gentle monsters, which actually don't really do anything, or mean monsters. And monsters are going to show up on spots that have artifacts after the artifact has been claimed. You can play in pirate mode, which is where you're going to have the mines trying to blow each other up, which you don't really blow each other up. You just lose some of your action cards. And then you can also play with a computer, the U-bots. And so you can actually have a computer in the game as well, and they will try to win the game as well. You can also play where you do have an 8x8 map, and you do use the blue area, or you can keep it small. And so now we're ready to play, and it's going to give you like a small narrative here, and you're ready to begin the map. And so you're trying to find the 4 spaces of Atlantis. We check the check mark, we're ready to go. Find Atlantis, be the first one to do it. Yada, 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 let's get into it. And so then it's going to tell you where everybody starts the game. And so you're going to make sure, come on, let's get through all of this. You're going to make sure that you position all of your submarines on your little map right here in the correct spots where you see all the other players. And so we want to make sure that we got that. And this is common knowledge. Everybody gets to know where they start the game. And that is predetermined by the app. And so now that we've got it set up, we're ready to begin, starting with the red player. And as you can see, it has flipped it upside down because, again, the red player is sitting over there on that side of the table. And so it's oriented for them. And you do want to make sure on your little compass right here to notate the correct orientation. So I was looking at the phone the correct way, let's say, and so all of the directions are going to be in the standard way, so north, south, east, west, like that. And so they will, let's turn it around so that you can see what they're doing. So the first thing that everybody gets to do on their first action is you get to take a secret move. And so how you do this is you make sure you're holding the phone to where only you can see it. You hit this button and it's silent running. So we're moving our submarine one space in whatever direction we want to go, north, south, east, and west. And as you can see, the compass has turned because they are looking at it again from this orientation. And so they might say, well, I want to go east. And in this case, that means they're going this way. And now it would be the green player's turn. As you can see, the orientation flipped again, and so that they're going to pick what direction they want to go, and maybe they want to go north. And you can have 2 submarines be on the same space. That's fine, no problems there. And now it's me, and I'm going to pick my silent running, and maybe I'm going west. And again, we're not seeing what all the other players are doing. I'm showing you all at home how this works, but I would not be knowing what direction the other players move their submarines. I would only know what direction I moved my submarine. So that's kind of how all this is going to work out. Then we get into where you can start taking actions. And so you can see here you have two light. I have not played on this phone. The phone that I'm filming with is the phone that we use to play through this game. So that's the reason why I'm having to go through all the tutorial again. So as you can see, we've got two green light bulbs right here. And that means that I've got two actions to use on my turn. And how this is going to work, the phone would be sitting right there in the middle of the table. And it would be oriented that way because, again, red player's sitting over there. But they will use their deck of cards to do whatever action they want to do. So let's check out what these different actions do. Silent running and long running are exactly the same, except silent running is going to move you one spot and long running is going to move you two spots. And so you use these to move yourself, as you might guess, silently around the board. And how this works is there's a compass needle on the back, and the phone is smart. It can read these codes holding it over the phone, and as you can see, it knew that that was long silent running because of the way this looks on the back of the card. And so we hold the phone up. This is secret only for your eyes, and you tell it which direction you want to move in two spaces. And so they're going to move west, which west for us is this way. Again, I wouldn't know that if I was the blue player. Only the red player knows it. But now it tells all the other players, red moved two spaces. You don't know which direction, but they moved two spaces. And you do have to play these cards face up. And so I would show everybody, yeah, I just used my silent long running. But again, you don't know what direction I moved in. And silent running works the same way. Now, the next card we'll look at is Sonar, which Sonar is going to show us the 8 spaces surrounding us for seamounts and deep oceans. And so again, the seamounts are the spots that are adjacent to the spots that could contain Atlantis or an artifact, or Atlantis or an artifact could be on that spot. So this is a really good card to play, and it will show you that what is around you. Oh, red, you are in a really bad spot. You should not be over there. There's a lot of nothing surrounding where the red player is at currently. But again, you don't know where the red player is. It's secret. Unless you've been able to deduce and piece together some information, you might be able to pick up some clues on where red is at. And now you know that wherever red is, it's really not a great place to be. Now, the Jelly Rod is another really good card because what it's going to do is it's going to scan the 2 spaces on opposite sides of you and let you know if there are traces there. And you do have to be mindful of the direction that this compass needle points in because if you scan it this way, then it's going to do the 2 spaces on the sides. And if you scan it that way, it's going to do the 2 spaces up and down from where you're at. But again, nobody knows where you're at, hopefully, so they can't really piece together too many clues. Now, the Explore action is your best card, and this is the card you need in order to win the game because it's going to be the only way to find out what exactly is on the spot that you're on. And it's either going to be nothing, which is not good, the Atlantis, one of the 4 Atlantis spots, which is great, and that's what you need in order to win the game, or it's an artifact. And if you find an artifact, you're going to draw one of these cards and add it to your hand, and it is a one-time use that, again, you would scan with the card as one of your actions to do whatever is on the card, such as telling you how many Atlantis spaces are in each of the 4 quadrants. And that's really good info. Now, you are the only person who gains the information, but everybody will then be able to see what card you just played, and they'll know that you know it because you're going to keep it face up in front of everybody. So there are some drawbacks to that. Now, if you are playing with the more advanced variant, you can drop mines, which is exactly what it sounds like. You're going to be dropping your colored mine on the spot that you're on, and then you move one space in the direction of the arrow. So I would move 1 space up like that, or left, right, up, down. You get the idea. Now, what mines do are if anybody moves into that spot at any point in the game, it's going to blow them up, and they have to discard 2 cards from their hand, not their surface card. So if I have 3 cards, I've got to discard these 2 cards. If I only have 2 cards, then I got to discard the 1. I can never discard the surface card, but basically you're just losing out on more actions for what you could do. And then the Periscope card is going to have you scan the 8 spaces around you to detect mines as well as sea monsters. Now, sea monsters are going to take up the spaces in which you find artifacts, so only one person gets to find that artifact, and then it instantly becomes a sea monster, and the sea monsters are going to attack you just like the mines are going to blow up on you, so you don't want to run into the sea monsters either. Now, the last card you have is your surface card, and whenever you play your surface card, you're going to surface, and everybody's going to see, the phone is going to tell you where that person is at on the map, and then you get all of your cards back into your hand. You don't get your artifacts, just your cards. And so that is how you get your cards back. Otherwise, they stay in your discard pile until you finally surface. Now, the last thing is your captain ability. Your captain ability is another card in your hand that you can scan over the phone to do whatever's on the card. And there's lots of different abilities. I'm not going to be able to show you all of the different abilities, but just know those are really cool special abilities as well. But that's pretty much the gist of the game. You want to try to be the first person to narrow in on where are all 4 spots of Atlantis. When you find a spot of Atlantis, the phone gives you the option to make a guess at where you think the other 3 spots are. And if you are correct, then you win the game. And if you're incorrect, then the penalty is the app randomly puts you somewhere else on the map. You teleport to that spot, but you don't know where it is. The phone does not tell you where it's at. You have to figure that out for yourself, and you might do that by surfacing or trying to piece together some of the clues, but you got to take actions to do that. So that's what you have here with Finding Atlantis. Let's go back up top and share our thoughts on this one. And we're back, and now we're going to share our thoughts on Finding Atlantis from a gamer and non-gamer's perspective. Sam, the first thing I want to ask you about this game is that, you know, it has this unique feature that you have to use an app to play this game. So you're going to need an internet connected device and something with a camera to scan those cards.
Yeah.
What did you think about that? You as a non-gamer, seeing that kind of feature of the game that you're scanning these cards to do your actions, what was that like for you?
It's definitely interesting and adds a different variety to that type of game. I did appreciate that you put in the direction that each player is at. As somebody who's dyslexic and playing from the side of a board game can, especially one where it matters where you're at, coordinates and directions. That was really important because I didn't have to try to flip things in my head or make sure I was sitting in a certain position. The phone knew when it was my turn to face all the directions my way. And so I think that's pretty, important.
Yeah, I think it's super necessary in this game too, given that there's a lot of hidden movement, or not necessarily. I mean, you're hidden from all the other players. You hopefully know where you're at on the board.
You think?
Not always the case. But other people's location is hidden, right? Like you get little clues as to where they might be. So it's super important that the orientation of the app matches where you're looking at it and how you're looking at your little piece of paper. And that's
but I don't know if I've ever
important.
seen that before.
Yeah, it's something that I would like to see other app integrations for games do.
Yeah.
Asking you, where are you sitting at the table?
Turning,
exactly.
If you forget to turn the phone or anything like that, then your everything's messed up.
Sure, exactly. Now let's talk about the way the game plays, because I'll be honest, my first time playing this, now granted it was at solo, I played the solo mode of this game first, and I found it to be a little bit confusing, and maybe that was just me and my one little brain working to try to comprehend this, and if you have more people at the table sitting down going over it, maybe it's not so bad. But I found it to be somewhat confusing how to use the cards to get where I need to be, to scan, to do different things. Because it is like a multi-tiered thing that you're having to do, right? Like I need to scan to see where the what are they called? The mountain points, the sea points, or whatever they're called. And then I know that means that something's nearby that, and it could be an artifact, but hopefully it's Atlantis. Hopefully it's not a mine. Like it's a tiered process. What was that like for you, trying to weave your way through that?
Yeah, that was difficult. I'm not a huge fan of anything where I have to write or draw. I think, not just because I'm lazy, which that might be it, but I think sometimes my way of drawing the iconography, I could do it wrong, I could mess it up.
Okay.
I'm having to translate what I'm seeing here over here. I just think there's a little bit of room for error. And if
I think there definitely is with this game.
I'm going to make that error.
Yeah. And see, I was going to say I do think that there's room for error in this game, but I didn't know if it was necessarily with having to draw. I suppose it could be. I mean, writing it in the wrong box definitely can be the way to make the error. But I feel like for me, the easier way to make the error in this game, several of the cards have to be scanned in a particular manner because it has that compass arrow. And if you scan it, and even if it's just by accident, because you just, lapse of judgment and you just did it the wrong way, then automatically you're moving in the wrong direction. And there's no way to rectify it. You just got to go with it from that point forward. Another way you can make an easy error in this game is that you thought you did it in a certain way, you just didn't pay attention, you move your boat on your piece of paper in that direction, but the app thought you went in a different way, and now you and the app are not on the same page. And that leads to lots of multiple problems happening from that point forward. So there are ways that you can make mistakes in this game, and it can be pretty detrimental to you. I wouldn't say that it ruins the entire game. You can kind of recover from it, unlike some other deduction games where if you make a mistake, like in Clue, if you tell somebody, no, I don't have that, and then they think, oh, well, then it has to be the wrench because nobody has it. And then, oh, wait, I did have the wrench. I'm sorry. That does ruin the game. And so you don't have that with this in this game. But let's talk about the fun factor with this game. Is this, as it bills itself, it says it on the front and the back, is this a thrilling deduction game to you?
I mean, yeah. We only played it with 2 people, which I think it only goes up to 4.
It goes up to 4, yeah.
We only played it with 2 people, but, I mean, there is a level of, secrecy and trying to get something before the other person does. And then
for sure.
I think maybe gamers would maybe be better about, okay, they moved here, let me try to remember that. I was very focused on just remembering my moves, and I think Lance could remember kind of. You obviously don't know exactly where that person is, but you have an idea. And I think in that aspect, the non-gamer is at a deficit.
And the gamer definitely does have a little bit of an advantage, but I will go so far to say that I primarily focused on what I was doing too. Now, there were a few times when Sam would do something, like she would surface, and then if she explored immediately after surfacing, well, I know where she's at, so I can kind of, pick,
it just planning
get that
those
from
moves.
her.
I wasn't great about thinking, oh wait, he will know that.
Yeah, so there's little small ways that you can get some information about where the other person's at. And I suppose there's ways that you could get bigger pieces of information, like if she would have surfaced and then immediately explored and found Atlantis, like one of the 4 spots that Atlantis could be, well, that's a huge thing for me to gain from her turn. You definitely don't want to do that. You don't want to be making those kind of mistakes in this game. But more often than not, this is a game where you're only getting such little tiny nuggets of info about what the other person's doing. And I don't know if that really amounts to a whole lot of deduction from what she's doing or any of the other players are doing. It's more so, what am I getting on my turn? And you don't want to make the mistakes that gives everything out to the other player. So it's really kind of more so that, I feel like, with this game. Okay, so let's get to pros and cons, the bullet points here for what makes this game good and works well with non-gamers, and maybe what doesn't work so well. So Sam, what for you were the things that stood out in a positive way?
I mean, the app is pretty inclusive to everybody in their direction of playing, so I think that's a really good thing. The iconography is fairly easy. I know I said like you could mess up drawing it, but that's just in general how I feel about roll and write type thing games.
Sure.
But overall, the iconography is pretty easy on this game, and for the most part, it's a pretty straightforward game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. Some of the things that I feel like were really positives to me, the app works really well. I know I mentioned that you can make mistakes easily with it. And the only thing that I would maybe like for the app to have is just like a way to take that back. Like if it did say, oh, you moved west because you dropped a mine and you're supposed to move after you dropped a mine and you held it this way, so you're moving west. I would like for you to be able to go, oh, no, that's not what I meant to do. Take that back. I wanted to move east. Like that would be a good thing to add to
That's
the
where
app.
I got messed up at one point because I surfaced and I was like, that is
not where I thought I was. Yeah. Now, obviously, there's some things you can't take back, right? Like once you surface, you can't take that back. But some things you should be able to take back. I thought that the concept of that, there are only so many artifacts out there, and once you get an artifact, then it becomes a monster if you're playing with the sea monster rules. I thought that was a good little addition to the game because like Sam said, it's a fairly straightforward concept of just trying to deduce where Atlantis can be and then adding on that little extra layer of, but you could also get these artifacts, and the artifacts are really cool. They are very good things that you do want to try to maybe go for, but if you don't get there first, somebody else gets it, then it becomes a really bad thing. And so I like that little twist to the game. Anything about this one that doesn't work so well for you?
I mean, I think I made some mistakes that, like Lance said, where you can't go back, and so there's no way of keeping count of your moves, and so I don't know where I got off, but I knew when I surfaced that's not where I was supposed to be.
Okay.
And so that was kind of we just kind of fixed it as best we can and moved on with the game. But I wish there was a way where maybe the phone could keep track of where your movements were supposed to have been or something like that.
Yeah, again, I think it kind of just goes back to that there are some easy ways to make mistakes in this one.
Yeah.
Which is always going to be the case with deduction type games, right? Like if I just note take the wrong way and check the wrong box or mark the wrong thing off or do something just slightly wrong, that's going to lead to a snowball effect of more problems on down the road. And this game is no exception to that. So you got to know that going into it. I do think that could be an issue when playing with non-gamers. If somebody's not used to playing these types of games, these deduction type games where, like I said, you want to narrow in on something. And if I make just a small clerical error, then my scope isn't narrowed in on the right thing. I've moved the arrow in the wrong direction. That can be a bad experience for somebody who's maybe not used to playing these kind of games. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right, so let's get to our scores for this one. Scale of 1 to 10, love to hate. Where is Finding Atlantis coming in at for you?
I'd probably give it a 6.3.
6.3. How come?
Just not my favorite type of game. I don't like the hidden movement games or the writing type games. And so I think it's just a complete preference on my part of what type of games I like, and this just isn't a type of game that's my favorite. I think it has a good theme and it's fun and it's going to be good for certain people.
Sure.
But just not my cup of tea.
All right, I'm going to give this one a 7.07 flat. And for me, I think the things that are interesting about it that make it unique, the app integration's really unique, really clever, and I like the way that it works. I like the scanning of the cards. I thought that was a cool little touch with the game. I know that's not going to be something everybody out there loves. I did enjoy it. I liked that aspect of it. It does add a few differences with deduction, with the little twists that I've already kind of talked about. Is it something that's groundbreaking and earth-shattering? I don't know. I think, that in the grand scheme of all the deduction games, it has some novelty, has some uniqueness to it. Is it going to be like the best deduction game of the year? Probably not. But I liked it well enough, so I'm coming in at 7.0 on this one for me. So the game is Finding Atlantis. It's from Hybr Synapses Games. Leave us some comments down below. Let us know what you think about this one.
Make sure to like and subscribe and push that bell button so you get notifications of all our new content.
I'm Lance.
I'm Sam.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to bridge the gap between gamers and non-gamers. We'll catch you next time.